Chapter 3 Penitents Beneath the Stars. The monks huddled around a small fire that Alarin, the youngest of their order, had started. Their long, pale faces seemed drawn in the jungle night, and worry creased their usually peaceful brows. They had given themselves over to the service of the Temple of the Great Turtle, on the wandering island called Ishamara in their ancient tongue, and had lived there for countless years of uninterrupted isolation and quiet reflection. Now, though, some ill-fortuned wind had blown a pack of sinners and lost souls to the Isamara's holy shores, and they had pillaged most of the great treasures that the monks had collected to honor the isle. They were sworn to abstain from violence, for was Isamara not an avatar of harmony? It circled the world across slow centuries, and was seldom moved to anger. Better to simply move on, as the tides did, than resist the wiles of such short and starved souls as those of men. Terranolin was their oldest, and he governed them as a superior penitent. He was ancient, even for an elderkin, having long lived beyond the strange borders of his homeland, where time held little sway. His face was heavily lined with age, and his golden hair had gone silver. Terranolin looked with half-blind eyes to their little fire, heedless of the jungle's wild, teeming music. Night birds chattered and insects hummed, but the biting flies left the clustered monks alone. Ishamara had chosen them and would not prey upon them. Swaddled in huge orange and blue robes, wearing necklaces of painted wooden beads carved from the buttery wood of the solace tree that sprouted amongst the boulders at the face of the shell crest, the monks waited for the reavers to leave so they could return to their home and appraise the damage. They were frightened when they heard the screaming coming from high above where their beloved temple lay. It was violent and furious at first, but took on an agonized edge that spoke of horror. The monks huddled close to ward off the danger and dark, taking in shallow breaths, pressing themselves to the ground like small things. Something very bad had happened in their home, and at the heart of the holy island, and they had done nothing to stop it. "We should be ashamed," Naudrillin said later. She was younger than Terranolin, but older than the rest. Her silver hair was laced with golden threads of her former beauteous luster, and unlike her superior, her face was yet untroubled by age. She still had a grace about her bones. She fed sticks to the fire slowly. "The mother would have smote those thieves." "We do not sit in judgment," Terranolin offered. "We tend the great turtle," Erendin intoned. She had been virtually silent since they fled the temple. Small, with unusually dark hair for an elderkin, her bronze eyes flickered in the orange glow of the small fire. The eldest began to pray. The others joined Terranolin's quiet intonations, reluctantly at first, but then all as one. They had prayed with a single voice for lifetimes among men, and had achieved a beautiful harmony in their praise of the sacred island. The prayer comforted them, soothed their tensions, and brought them together in a way beyond words. What was a little lost treasure in the face of their great and long service? Worship was the best medicine, and Terranolin knew it better than anyone. A long time passed after the distant screaming from the temple was lost to the wind. Still, the monks prayed, feeling the deep current of power that beat in the island's heart beneath their knees. Alarin alone paused to keep their little fire fed, for they honored only Zol above Ishamara, and always they would tend a fire in their worship of him. The kindled light may not be in the brazier behind the altar, wherever it had burned since Terranolin had come to the island, but this humble light would lift their hearts just as well. Meilin, the second youngest, gasped when something moved just outside their camp. The jungle fell silent, and Alarin ceased his prayers, peering out into the dark. His eyes shone like a cat's in the dark, nervous lamps searching the dark foliage, afraid that the men had come back to kill them. His hand crept towards the hilt of the sword he had snatched up from the display in the gallery. Though they abstained from violence, the monks practiced the ancient arts of war, as all of the elderkin of Eridesh did, for it was their charge to be ever vigilant against the shadow. Yet in 3 centuries Alarin had never lifted his blade in anger, or with the intent of true violence. Now he gripped it tightly, ready to kill if he had to. It felt alien, strange, as if the balance had changed to match the circumstances. Now Drillin took up her sword too, and Irundin clutched a dagger to her breast. Only Mei Lin and Taranolin knelt, unconcerned with whatever lurked in the bush. Another noise, nearer yet. Alarin surged to his feet and said, "Show your face, vagabonds! You might rob the temple, but I will not let you harm us." Now Drillin stood beside him. Together they searched the dark. "I came to this place 700 years ago," Taranolin whispered, "to seek peace for the blood I shed during the War of the Burning Horizon. Ishamara called me to the sea to bathe in the surf and promised to wash my heart clean. I will not dishonor her by raising a blade again in anger." The admonition hurt Alarin, but it did not assuage the fear. "They're out there," he whispered. "They're here to finish the job they started in the temple." Suddenly, Mei Lin pressed her forehead to the ground as if bowing in supplication. She let out a low, terrified moan. "What is she doing?" asked Irundin. "Taranolin, is she well?" The old monk reached out a shaking, gnarled hand to the youngling. He held it just above her back, but did not touch her. A quiet gasp escaped his lips. "A vision is upon her. Ishamara speaks through her." Alarin looked over his shoulder. "What's going on?" he cried. His fear leapt into his throat. Long years of honing calm had not prepared him for the sudden closeness of danger and bloodshed. But it was not the superior penitent who answered. Mei Lin, small, quiet Mei Lin, spoke now with the issue of divine command. "Stay your hands. Before you, a lion, crowned in his majesty and cloaked in starlight. Can you not hear the surge of fate around him? Do you not recognize those who come before you, given life again in new flesh? Die by your swords, or lay them aside, fools, but I will not raise a fist against him." "It cannot be," Naudrillin said. She dropped her sword, and it stuck in the ground, point first. She threw herself to her knees. Taranolin and Irundin had joined Mei Lin, placing their foreheads to the forest floor. They were all facing the direction of the noises Alarin had heard. The young monk slowly set his own blade down and knelt. A dark shape drew forth from the woods. Now Alarin raised his eyes to see what doom came before them, for Mei Lin's strange portent had shaken him to the core. He expected something vast and powerful, wreathed in the arcane, profound beyond knowing. Instead, he saw a man, slathered in dry mud, bleeding from cuts to the shoulder and arms, with black hair loose about his shoulders. He wore nothing but a kilt, sandals, and a strap across his back. On one finger a band of gold glimmered. Alalin's breath caught as he saw it, and knew it for what it was. Eye-bending designs were pressed into the band, cosmic patterns that traced infinitude into the narrow golden ring. Fustanustir's ring, he knew. An inheritor stood before him. Fate made flesh, an avatar of the firstborn. The lion's lord's face among those carved on the prangs above the central gallery at the temple. Fustanustir had broken the enemy's forces during the return, and reconquered countless lost lands. The greatest fighter the world had ever seen, and his inheritors were no less. Fierce kings and warlords of the mortal races, dragon killers and giant slayers around whom legends swirled. But, Alarin knew, the ring had passed out of memory long, long ago. Now, the lion walked again, celestial might clothed now in the flesh of a grey-eyed man. Alarin was witness to something vast in its importance, and yet could not bring himself to speak. The others were silent before this fearsome spectre, too. "Who are you?" the man asked in a gruff, surly voice. Tyrannolan answered in a quavering voice. "We are the monks of Ishamara, Lord, servants of the Great Turtle." "Then this belongs to you," the man said, and tossed several heavy sacks next to the fire. The treasures inside clattered and clanged as they spilled out onto the ground. "Lord, tell us your name," Tyrannolan said. His mustaches trailed on the ground as he bowed low again. "I am Orem of the Oran. I am the Lion-born," the man said. His voice was heavy with pride. "We are honored by the presence of Fustanustir's inheritor." "I've heard that name before," he said. "An old legend amongst my people." Tyrannolan's voice was solemn as he said, "The long chains of memory are broken in this forsaken age, my lord. The younger races remember little of Fustanustir, except for his exploits as a conqueror. He was much more, a lord, a liberator, a maker of kings, and a great justice of the realms. Here on the Isle of Ishimara we serve his sister, Enrelea, the mother of storms. This holy island was her throne, and to those who bear her ring." Orem gave an impressed grunt. "Is she here?" "No, lord," said Irindin sadly. "We have waited for the mother's return for many years." "Seeing you is a great boon to us," Naudrelin said, her voice unsteady. She kept her eyes on his feet. "How come you to Ishimara?" The man seemed to consider his words carefully. The monks sat back on their knees and studied him. Finally he said, "A few days ago, my crew got me drunk. They bound my arms behind my back and tied a stone around my feet. Then the captain tossed me and my kit overboard. I slipped my bonds and swam to the surface. The current pulled me to the beach." The monks looked at one another. "The pirates? They are your crew?" "Not anymore," he growled. A fiery, deadly light sprung up in his eyes. The monks saw within them echoes of the ghosts around Orem, and their wrath was plain. "Fate has delivered me all my traitors, save one who gave the order. Another came in his place, but I will find use for that one. Stay here until sunrise. It should be over by then." And like that, the lion who walked as a man was gone, striding away into the forest and leaving the penitents breathless.